So as we all know, Georgia was the state that ended up flipping the Senate in the favor of Democrats with the elections of Ossoff and Warnock in those special runoffs. So in response to that, Georgia officials appeared to be trying to find a way to make sure that does not happen again. So they're investigating cases about groups that helped mobilize voters, particularly voters that are mostly disenfranchised and kept from the voting system altogether. So something absolutely needs to be done about that. There's been a couple of cases that they did refer to the board that they want prosecuted to figure out immediately. So the first case from The Guardian. In 2019, investigators in Georgia, they allege that there was one group that's, this is Stacey Abrams' group called the New Georgia Project. They say that group violated state law by not handing in 1,268 voter registration applications within the 10 days required under state rules. Also, in their information, Warnock, who was the Democrat who won that election, is named as a respondent in the case because he was listed as the CEO of the New Georgia Project at the time. And in fact, the organization has said that the corporate document filings within the state misidentified Warnock as its CEO when his actual title with the group was board chairman. So that's just one caveat of it, speaking about how Warnock was listed on it. But it does make it look more like this was a concerted effort. But let's go back to the whole point of this first issue, was that 1,268 voter registration applications were supposed to be in within 10 days. That didn't happen, so we need to investigate and figure out what all is going on. And of course, this will be legal proceedings, things that could potentially tie up the normal process for these groups, which is actually one of the things that they did say. So before I get to the second case that they're concerned about, one of the heads of these groups did say, so when we've got these kinds of filings happening, court cases being brought up over things like this, what it does do is take away time, money, and energy that you would have towards doing our normal routine, which is getting voters registered, make sure they go out, make sure they know when voting days are, just things that are usually kept from these types of voters. And we already know the Voting Rights Act always gets pushed back and is hotly contested, and Republicans want nothing to do with it because obviously the more people vote, the fewer Republicans get elected. So moving on to the second case before you guys jump in on each of these. It involves an individual canvasser from the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, which is another group that's helping to get voters in. So that one, the state board referred, they dealt with a canvasser from that group that played an instrumental role in registering new voters. That canvasser allegedly submitted 70 false voter registrations while working on behalf of the group. Gasp. Well, so that is a bad thing. So there's the thing, Helen Butler, who was an executive director of the group, said that the group caught that the person that was forging that voter registration applications in 2019, and that she was the one who reported the canvasser to the Secretary of State's Office for Investigation. This part of it was not mentioned in the press release that Raffensperger office put out just on Thursday. So anytime there's someone that's within the group that's doing something that is out of bounds, that isn't helpful to what we're doing, is illegal, you would hope that the group would get rid of that person, report them, make sure that activity stops. It's exactly what happened. But in the meantime, those parts of the information have not been included in these briefings and in these cases that they have against these groups. So how big are these cases, you guys?
Yeah, they're non-existent. They're total lies. So let me be clear. So Raffensperger and Kemp in Georgia stood up to Trump in some ways, and Raffensperger in a lot of ways. But I don't want you to get mistaken for who they really are. They're massive right wingers, and they probably lead the country in cheating before an election, but they just didn't want to do it after the election. So the way they cheat before an election is they do voter purges, they shut down as many voters as possible, especially in Democratic areas, and honestly, especially in black areas. And so here they are going after a group that registers voters because they don't want people voting. And that's how they cheat before the election. So they put a ton of costs on them, just as the Stacey Abrams group mentioned. Now the substance of it is super clear. The group is the one that turned in the people who did the fraudulent ballots. How could you prosecute them when they're the ones who brought in the bad guys? That makes no sense at all. That just means I'm a political hack. I want you guys to lose the election. I'm gonna be in the election. I want to win. So I'm gonna try to hurt you in every way conceivable, and in some ways that are not conceivable. The other violation was, you're supposed to turn in the ballots within 10 days, and they missed that technical deadline. Was it because they were trying to hide Republican voters or anything? No. Was there any fraud? No. It's a technical violation. No, it's totally bad faith to attack Democratic, and in this case, honestly, black voters to make sure they vote less.
One of the things, because I've done work like this before myself with registering voters, the thing about these kind of technical laws and the strictness of something like a 10-day voter registration return, it's to chill and intimidate organizations from doing voter registration drives. Because if you could face legal liability because a couple voter registrations fall in the crack somewhere in your trunk of your car, a lot less people are going to want to be willing to go out there and register voters, which is one of the most difficult things you can actually do in politics. Is find people and register them to vote. So, and the other thing is like having one canvasser who was bad faith, who was probably being paid to get knock doors or do something, and registering voters is very difficult, hard work. And somebody turned in some fake registrations and was caught by that organization. It's pretty clear that they were working in good faith, and they had one employee go rogue, do a bad act. And the way Republicans act is that group is doing something we don't want done. Registration of young people, registration of people of color, registration of leftists. So we're going to attack the whole process because of one individual bad actor and tar the good efforts to try to improve our democracy. So that's why we need to really get the Voting Rights Act passed in this Congress. We have to pressure every single Democrat to get House Resolution 1, the John Lewis Vote Advancement Act passed immediately, because it does things like provide automatic voter registration and things that we need in this country if we're going to defeat Republican attempts to voter suppress.
Yeah, one more thing that's important. They get to use taxpayer money to attack this group, but the group is using your money, small dollar donations, to fight back. So they're bleeding them dry while using your money in both ways. And there's a great irony here. The Rapsenberger defended the democracy against Trump. But once they get into power in Georgia, they immediately try to change the rules to subvert democracy so they could never lose power.
All right. Paul Weyrich did say a long time ago, I don't want everybody to vote. This is a Republican. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been. We want fewer people to vote. That's how we keep winning. Republican 101.
Paul Weyrich founded the Heritage Foundation and many other right-wing think tanks that dominate today. That's always been their philosophy.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.